do you ever get this way? You just kind of get stymied. You're so excited when you see something and you think of something, and then you sit down to do it, and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
I feel like that every time I create something. So, about 4 years ago, I was relocated to North Texas. I was looking for places to exhibit and continue my life as an artist. I landed in the Hurst, Bedford area. I started to try to strategize how I could keep my my artist career alive. And what I found was a community of other artists who just wanted a career. And so part of our strategy was being pop-up artists, which I always knew that if you found yourself in a strange land, you could set up a tent or grid walls and go out and meet the public. So we had been doing this, and there's a fatigue to doing that type of thing. It's not easy. And one day, I heard someone call me by name. And this nice lady comes up to me and talks about Central Arts, which is who all this activity was being driven through. That was our home, but we were outside of there trying to bring people into that energy. And that was a nice signifier that what we were doing was working. And that person was Cindy Shepard, who's here with us today. At that time, she was running for city council. And that made me happy to know that somebody running for city council was an artist and had an interest in the arts. And since then, she's been our champion and spokesperson, and I'm happy to sit here and talk some art. How are you?
You know what, Sergio? I think I had on this shirt.
Yeah.
And I bought the Reservoir Dog piece from you, and it's hanging in my living room.
Nice.
Yes. So I was happy to see you. I think it was you and, was it Juan or was it Teal?
Probably Teal's sons.
Okay.
And who?
Yes, I am a champion for what you're doing because you guys are doing such a great job.
But aside from that, we've really never talked about your art. I'm looking at your backgrounds and I'm mesmerized. I've always liked your art. I have one of your pieces in my home. And how did it start for you?
Well, actually, the way it started, I kind of, back in the 70s even, I was someone that did all the macrame, and, I fell in love with all the turquoise that was coming out of Santa Fe and places like that. And I studied gemology. And I really became more of a jewelry artist, just, doing some beading and things like that. But also, I've always loved old stuff. I've always had a real appreciation for things that are like deteriorating, or, like when I was a kid, my grandpa and I would go to the town junkyard, and both of us treasured the things that we would find in the junkyard. So I actually have quite my husband says that he spends thousands of dollars on buildings to hold $5 worth of my stuff. But you know what, that stuff, I actually kind of started doing assemblage. That was really one of my first loves, was just taking some of that old stuff and, finding ways to connect it. I had to learn how to do riveting. I experimented with glues. Believe it or not, for a long time, I burned my art, and I just love that melty quality. And that was before the term mixed media artist was even a thing, because I kept thinking, I would join different groups. We've still got some of those groups around, and it was mostly every time there was an art show, it was like, do you do watercolors? Do you do oils? Do you do colored pencils? And I'm like, well, what about this thing that has all this stuff glued to it and it's burned over here? And there wasn't a category. So I kept doing that. And then when I first heard that term mixed media artist, I thought, oh my gosh, that's what I am. I finally feel like I have a home. But even now, I've even kind of extended to experimental artists because this, Sergio. I mean, I just kind of skip from one thing to another. So I've just tried a little bit of everything and enjoyed the ride.
Well, don't you think this? You're talking about skipping from one thing to the other. I mean, isn't that the creative process?
I think it is, and I think it is. I think most artists, they want to experiment and they want to look at something and go, what can I make with this? Or the way that that you're doing all the baseball, just the way you paint that. I mean, it's obvious what it is, but it's completely your style, and that's your eye. And I think that that's what's so important when you're doing art, is just to learn to develop your eye by looking at something and going, what is this to me? And I really enjoy that process. Although, sometimes I find it difficult. I feel, do you ever get this way? You just kind of get stymied. You're so excited when you see something and you think of something, and then you sit down to do it and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Does that happen to you?
I feel like that every time I create something. I feel like I'm a fraud. Like, like in photography, which is where I started, right down to today, if I walk into the studio and it's a blank slate, I feel like I'm lying to the world. But once I'm in it, that goes away, and I realize.
I think you do. I think you have to. I think you just have to force yourself to walk in there and do it. But I think that's why you and I both, and so many of the artists in our area, have this real need to share creativity. I know you've mentored a lot of different younger artists that are coming up, and I hope that I have helped to mentor some people too, because they feel that way. And knowing that we feel that way, yet we can get through it. It's just kind of helpful when you take someone under the wing and say, you can do it. Kind of like the water boy, Adam Sandler.
Yeah. That idea of mentoring, to me, it's just doing it. It's leading by example. The part of the reason I create every day is to be able to say that, and to give somebody who's maybe making excuses about not creating no excuse. Because if this guy with 3 toddlers in tow, and a flurry of other activity, can set apart time once a day to create at least one piece, then there isn't an excuse. And that, yeah.
Right. And even one of the things that I appreciate about, when we were doing Central Arts of Hurst, especially with the kids, it's like even the materials you've got all kinds of options with materials. So introducing them to, as we talked about, mixed media is kind of like taking a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And so just taking the little slick of dried acrylic paint and putting it into paintings and things like that. That really helps when you're mentoring someone, to let them know that they don't have to have all these expensive materials to be an artist.
I love hearing you talk about you like old things, because I first saw your work, I connected to it immediately, and I think that's a big part of it. To me, I always talk about my work as archaeology.
Oh,
and that's what assemblage is. but you can also feel that in just any of your pieces. There are layers and textures that
There
I
are,
really
and that
enjoy.
is, I'm still working on that. I mean, I love, like I've got a hair dryer and a sander plugged into my right next to each other because it's like, am I going to dry this or am I going to sand the crap out of it? And actually, sanding is kind of fun, when you get all those layers on there, and even if it's kind of wet, you get that gummy feel, and then so yes, I do enjoy working in layers, and I love to work with old papers. I don't know if you've ever seen all the old papers that I have, but just collecting old letters and
The I remember the Valentine, uh, the ones you made from old Valentines for the Miss Lonely Hearts show, I think that we did, which
yes,
was yeah.
well,
No,
those were super fun.
I love that. So what has quarantine done to your creativity?
Oh
Or
well,
not or this COVID world, not everybody's in quarantine, but we are sequestered to some degree whether we like it or not.
we are. Uh, Actually, for me, it has. I've been more active in my art and more appreciative of the time that I just felt like I've had more time, being involved in city government and being involved in so many of the art things that were, that we were working on before COVID, and then all of a sudden everything just stops. So I felt like I had to have some release. I mean, it's stressful when we think about all the things that are going on in our communities and how we're not even able to gather as a community. And when you think about some of the artists, and especially if you're in the performing arts, I mean, look where Central Arts of Hurst is. There's the Artisan Theater, performing art. I mean, it was immediately shut down. So I just looked for anything I could slap on a substrate. I didn't even care what that substrate was. In fact, I started building my own stools.
Wow.
I don't know if you've seen those, but they're just these little sturdy little stools that have like three parts. And I got my grandson to help me. He does the sawing so that all the pieces, the legs are even and everything. But I started painting the flower pots, just so I guess what it did to my art is it made me want to paint comforting things, paint things I could garden with, or paint things that I could like find useful. Because I think that also is another thing that the pandemic has caused, is us to look at our lives and think, what do I really need, instead of what is it I want and what do I want to shop for. And I'm hoping actually the art world that this will end up being a kind of an opportunity for people to appreciate more, just having just handcrafted things and things that have special meaning, and maybe get away from all of that, just buying a piece of art to fill a home. It's this time you're buying something that you can really fall in love with. And that's what artists do, right, Sergio? We
Yeah.
make things that people can fall in love with. We make things that connect with people.
Well, it's language. It is interaction. It's dialogue, as I say. I love what you're saying, that you found comfort in making functional art. Then, because it art, I've always said it kind of becomes a luxury. I can't sell you this, and it's like groceries.
Exactly.
It is sustenance, but it's a different kind. Um, but
Well, one of the reasons when we did start to get out a little bit, one thing I did do was we have that outdoor market. So outdoor sales or outdoor markets are accessible now, whereas we can't do gallery shows and things like that as often as we want to, if at
So
all.
the
But I think that, the other thing was I wanted to make other people um, be able to feel like they could afford art. And so I thought if I put it on a flower pot, then not only do you have, and as you know, I invited you to paint some, and I've invited some other local artists to just start painting pots so that it would be accessible to the public, and that they would feel like that was something that they could do and make them happy as well. And I think it worked. And then there was a pot shortage.
yeah.
But
Well,
we can
but
talk
then-
about that later.
But then you gravitate through new ideas, because that was a discussion we had. You were working on the project where you're painting pots, and then you can't get any pots, and we said, well, does it have to be pots? I mean, that's the beauty of art.
It is.
It does not have to be pots. It could be pans. It
Pots
can be
or stools.
yeah. It we make the rules and we change them constantly, and it's okay. So which is great. It works towards the flakiness of an artist. So it becomes a
does.
strength.
It does become a strength. I mean, I think that you're very much like that too. I mean, I'll walk into where your space sometimes, and it's like you've taken something and just slapped some paint on it, or just made it into some kind of mural. You've done quite a few murals, and just taking a blank wall, and I think that's important too.
To me, it never stopped being play. I have very early memories of paint, and I have very early memories of making things, and that was my happy zone. And that's what I want it to be for everyone else. It makes me happy, so I want everybody else to be happy.
Bill, I love your story of when you were a kid and you got to take those inexpensive art classes in your community, and I think that's really important. That's what I meant earlier about really working to bring creativity to your community. So you should tell that story.
Yeah, well, we'll go through a little history here, because I told the story of how I first met you. So exciting. And then really Central Arts Hurst, our first location was in Bedford. We're a 501c. And then this next space was brainstorming with you in the city of Hurst. And so it's 2,800 square feet. And I remember all we knew is that we had to make this work somehow.
That is all we knew.
So we had a soft opening in April of 2018.
Yes.
And then we're leading into summer, and we're going to have a summer program. And so discussions around Central Art are what to price it at. I was conscious of summer camps in the area, and I believe, I don't know for how long it was, but they were about $200. And I'm looking at the neighborhood we're in, which I fully committed to this space. I live down the street from it. I can see it from my house. So I know the neighborhood, and I know that this guy with 4 kids isn't going to send his kids to summer camp for art if it's $200 a kid.
Right.
And I remembered growing up in North Houston, and there wasn't much for us to do in the summer, but my mom found at the local park that they were giving classes for $5. And so I got to go twice. First time there wasn't very many kids. Second time there was less. It was me and a girl. And then the classes went away. And I'd forgotten about it until I'm in my late 20s and I'm at my mom's house, my mom and dad's house, and I see this little plastered thing that I had made in that class. And my mom's looking at me and just beaming. And I'm like, what? She's like, I remember when you made that. You just held it and you thought it was the most beautiful thing in the world. And suddenly I remembered that, and I just had this glow because that was a special moment. And it was because somebody on that park board sat down at a table and said, we've got to do something for these kids. And I wish I could find that person and thank them. So instead what I did was I made classes that were $6 per kid.
Well, I think they call that paying it forward. So someone did something good for you, and you did something good as well.
Well, yeah, and
Very successful. My gosh, the first week, didn't you have as many as, what was it, like 20 kids?
We were continuously sold out for weeks, and it waned as the summer got through, but even then that carried on to after school programming up until COVID hit us. We were still having $6 classes, and we're finding ways to continue that. But
something else I was so proud of is the special needs, having the special needs once a month.
I miss all that. Yeah. All Abilities Night. It's for families of special needs individuals. They can come and have a space to be creative. The first night that we did it, I always remember the one lady saying, "Thank you for making something my son can come to." But that's what art is about to me. It's funny growing up with it, because I don't know how it was for you, but just being a younger artist, it's just I wanted to compulsively do all these things, but I didn't necessarily know what that was about. I think fatherhood changed my point of view a lot. I'm able to share this with my kids and other people's kids and other individuals that just need it. And so I'm glad I was stubborn and persisted. So, but in turn, that leads me to question. So, you joining city council and having that art presence, was it similar journey for you, or?
As far as how I came to art, or how I
guess your philosophies is what I'm curious about.
Now I have 12 grandchildren.
Uh-huh.
So for one thing, as you talked about with children and experiencing creativity, that was one of the things that as a grandmother we would spend a lot of time in the art studio. And the things you hear from the kids when you were in an art studio for hours, and it was just, I was very close to the kids. I think it just, and not all of them were really, I don't know about all three of your children, but not all of my grandkids were interested in art in the same way. But that's where we would do things like we would get old cedar roots and just paint them to look like monsters. And so you really, I just think that creativity can come in so many forms. And I think that when it comes to, my decision to go on the city council, a lot of it was about just expressing that. And it was really about getting more public art out there, opportunities for public art. introduction of local artists because I already knew so many being an artist because I had gone to classes at Central Arts of Bedford years before I decided to run for an office, and you were always accessible and you were always affordable, and I think that that's one thing that communities need is just a lot of that. So that was really my whole goal behind going ahead and starting arts. And I'd been talking about it for years, and we had that wonderful Bel Air Center. So, and
Yeah.
I think it's been really successful, don't you?
No, and I'm glad. It's interesting to hear because we met at that point, but like I don't know how long before that we had been beating the pavement, and whenever you're doing something like that, trying to get the engine started, I guess it feels so solitary. But when we had that connection, it meant so much to me, and especially afterwards, and the things we've done all together, it's beautiful, and
It really is, sort of, yeah.
and even through this pandemic, we're doing cool things. With the Little Monster Project, which you've drawn monsters for, and what the Little Monster Project is it spawned from getting Amazon boxes during when I started to get more things delivered to the house. Just looking at all these boxes and thinking, really should do something more than put them in the green bin. So I cut them up, and with my kids, we drew monsters on them, put some paint, and made little kits that we leave in front of Central Arts Hurst, and they're free to the public. That's still going on, and pretty soon we just got a grant from Rotary to do the Little Monster Academy. So we'll have like library type kits so people can wood carve with their children. Parental supervision required, but it just it keeps going no matter what. That's the power of creativity. I love the things you're doing.
Back in the day, they'd just call that whittling. And
Yeah.
all the little kids could sit out on the porch and whittle. I mean, that was another thing I did with my grandboys was because I remember my grandpa or my uncle or they would sit out on the porch and just whittle, just grab a stick and whittle, and that's a very meditative thing. I mean, they would talk and whittle. So there you go. I'm plugging the wood class.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious. So, I talked about first, I guess, landing here, but you've been here a while, yes? And
Yes, I have. In fact, in Hurst, when I was a kid, my mom worked for Bell Helicopter.
okay,
So that's one reason Bel Air is really special to me because that was the main center. That was kind of like the downtown. They had the movie theater, which is where Artisan is now, and they had all these little dress shops, and they had Watsons. And when you talk to people in the mid cities, that is one of the areas that they remember, and it's kind of it's more like it's kind of the mid-century modern feel, one of those strip mall things. But I think what we're working on and what we're doing with it, because we're also looking at putting like little parklets in there and some things like that to get more people just to spend time there.
because when I came here, it was like I said, I found a bunch of other artists, but it's like things weren't doing, and so I was like, well, let's do. But what was it? What was it like from your point of view? I guess you'd been here. You're an artist, like I guess that's
Well, okay, I'll be honest. Because you heard me say earlier that it was not that even when I was doing art, I felt like it was not the type of art other people were doing. That I felt like everything was still, when I first started doing art, you were a fine artist or not. And I never got that because I never considered what I did fine art. I just considered it creativity. I just considered it like finding old things and putting them together and loving the way that it made me feel. So while during this time, I had been a member of different art organizations, but not for long. And I would try different ones. So it truthfully, guys or Sergio, it wasn't until I met you and Josh and Till, and that I thought, okay, these are young artists that are more experimental. They don't go into art and think, oh, this is my medium, which being the type of personality I am, because I've always been kind of considered like a jack of all trades and a master of none, because I just like doing things and I'll have a passion for it for a while, and then it's like, okay, I've been there, I've done that, now what can I do? Whereas there's so many people that and that's kind of the way art had always been presented, I think. It's like you learn to oil paint and you do portraits of in oil. And while I think that's wonderful, I think that the art world is opening up so much more, and people are just like, as I said earlier, to not even have the term mixed media artist until, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago. That wasn't even a term. So yes, it had just been kind of confined to having a few shows, hanging things in the library, and then the art organizations that were here kind of sticking with the same medium. So I think it's really changed a lot in the last, I guess maybe 10 years. Now, how long have you been here? Has it been about 10 years?
No, I moved to Fort Worth in 2016.
Oh, wow.
I was looking for a place, or just places to exhibit. I knew one person kind of in Fort Worth, and so really, literally, I asked a bar that was by the museums in Fort Worth if I could set up a tent out there. I had my baby strapped to me, and that's where I started to get alerted to like festivals. Josh, who started Central Arts, found me in Arlington at their street festival, and he mentioned Bedford. He didn't have a card, and I didn't know where anything was. I didn't know what Bedford was. I knew Fort Worth and Dallas and Arlington, but and then it wasn't till a year later or months later, I was at Arts Goggle. My little girls were born on this date, 2016, and I was at Arts Goggle, and that's when I started to come to Bedford, was that November, and I liked the space, and I liked the idea that we could do some cool things in this area, and there were a few artists that were here. I zeroed in on Juan Zamora right away. I liked his work. He was nice, and that was kind of my first cohort. And then we started building from there, and just doing shows aggressively in the Bedford space. But no, I haven't been here very long. But when I got here, there's a Trinity Artists Guild, which I love those ladies, but I knew we were different.
I think that you've been in the community just a few years, but you've already just, I think changed the art scene. But now, Fort Worth was a little more. When you asked me about this area, I was thinking of HEB, because
and that's what I'm asking about.
Okay.
Yeah, Fort Worth has its own groove.
Right.
But what I like as a father of three, I love this area. I can raise my kids here, but I also want it to be, when they grow up, that they say with pride where they came from. and that's up to us. But I want to go back to what you were saying about because it's a lot of the mission of Central Arts to kind of debunk that way of thinking. Art traditionally has been kind of boxed in, and you were either a fine artist or not.
Exactly.
And to me, that sucks the fun out of art.
Is a good point. It does, because that's the fun.
I talk about I never lost that child. I don't think anyone should ever lose the child that starts to create something and just thinks it's the most beautiful thing in the world, because it is. It's their little voice, and that little voice should carry with you all your life.
I love that saying about life is just, use the whole box of crayons.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
I think so.
And then some. So
Even if they're broken.
yeah, but I haven't been here long, but I have a strong connection to the land, to the community.
Well, I think HEB, and I preach this all the time. I mean, I'm in Hurst, but I think HEB is a unique area because it is the Hurst, Euless, Bedford area, and I think it's very important that the cities work together. And I think that not just, you've got Central Arts in Bedford, you've got Central Arts in Hurst, and now you've got some other things that are, like the market. I'm also part of Arts DFW, which is a nonprofit. So we're in your little monster project, which is nonprofit. Central Arts is nonprofit. So I think that I think that alone just tells you that the arts are expanding because we're gaining more ways to fund the arts, and I think that's very important.
Super important, and thank you for thinking that way, because that, like I said, meeting you that day just gave us fire, whether you realize that or not.
No, I didn't. Thank you.
Because I remember telling Teal, because we'd go and do these things, and it's not glorious work to put up a tent.
No.
But you do what you need to do. And
But you know what? You guys showed up all the time, and I love the live painting. See, I think that's another thing, that when you attend these things, that you're live painting, and that draws an audience, it draws curiosity, and I think that's been very successful for you, hasn't it?
Well, I always tell the guys we can sit there and stare at people as they awkwardly enter our tent, or we could use it as studio time, and maybe they'll buy something.
I really should do that more. I am more but you know me, I bring all these different little things. I also do a lot of art journaling.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I do is doing art journals. And so I'm always bringing all these little things, and I never bring an easel and just go out there and paint. And I think I think I envy the fact that you guys can do that with such confidence, because I don't think I would have the confidence I don't think I could concentrate on my painting if I was doing it. Do you find that? I guess you've done it so much, it's easy for you, but that's probably something I need to attempt to do, Sergio. But I think I do lack confidence in that.
It's okay not to be focused on it. There's no pressure. It's just, it's out there, and if it hits, it does. If not, I think that's just part of the discipline of actually doing things. And yeah, if you're feeling intimidated by it, don't. It's not.
But don't you think it's something I should get over?
Yeah, it's not. It's not.
I force myself to do it.
Well, it's that whole idea. I guess my big artist demeanor is, who cares? Who cares if somebody is watching or judging, or if they don't like it, or it's nice when they do like it, but I try not to listen to any of it, because um, I'm I'm making what makes me happy, and if I do that, it'll make somebody else happy. At least one person. If it's just one person, that's
Do you
worth
get
it
a
to
lot
me.
of questions while you're, I mean, I know people are standing there watching. Do they ask you a lot of questions?
Yeah, people will chat you up, but that's part of it. This is a social thing. When we're in our studio, not so much, but I was never one that didn't like people around or doesn't like people around when I'm creating. I'm good with that. Now, our conversations might be very fragmented, but I like having people around. And that's kind of like I said, when you're painting live, it's just studio time. And if people want to chat, by all means. So it doesn't
That would be interesting because I I don't like having people around. So I just wonder, what's the ratio? How many artists like having people around? It just seems like I cannot concentrate as well. If
I
I have
used to
people
worry.
around. I feel like I don't do my best work because I can't think. I don't know.
Well, see, and that doesn't, like I said, there's no pressure to do your best work.
Oh, but
You
I
may,
put pressure on.
you should stop that.
Somebody, I want. I had this wonderful artist trip years ago. I went with a group to San Miguel Allende, uh, and
I've
spent
always
like,
wanted to go there.
oh my gosh, it's wonderful. But since it was an artist trip and I was with the group, we would, we went out to an old ghost town one time, and then we went to the square, and we would we would draw the cathedral. And I remember that we were all sitting there drawing the cathedral. And, now that I think about it, some people were just like drawing, not paying attention, but yet it was such a crowded area that people were walking up and looking. And now that I think about it, I remember thinking, "Oh my God, mine's not very good." Look at what Suzanne is doing, or look at this, or look at that. And so I'm just recognizing what a problem that is for me. Even though I enjoy going out and doing, art and, on site, and trying to, draw cathedrals or draw what I see in front of me. I think I'm going to try doing that more. And if somebody walks up to me, then that's okay. I'll just have a conversation. I won't like cover my paper.
Yeah. Uh, I'm thinking of the very first time I live painted. A friend of mine, Shelly Shanks, who was an artist in Houston, had moved to Colorado. And so she had a night where it was like dinner, and people would come up, have a request for like an animal, paint me an elephant. She'd do it live. And so she couldn't do the gig, so she gave it to me. And for weeks I just sat there and practiced painting fast. Just thought of an animal, would do it, and I was so that whole thing where you start on a blank canvas and you feel like a failure. I was very much feeling that. But what I realized is once I started going, I felt good. But also people weren't really paying attention. And then it was fine because they're not. They may come in and chat, but they're not really.
They're not critiquing. They're interested in what you're doing, but they don't critique.
If anything, they're highly interested in it.
Huh.
The only thing that kind of deterred me for a little bit was that I would hear, well, I didn't want to disturb you. And I felt like maybe that was costing me sales, but then I learned to not care about that. I mean, if it's okay. It's okay if I don't make the sale.
So how
Because
quick are you painting?
the
10 minutes or 5 minutes or?
see, I was selling
Sounds
these.
like a good practice. I think I'll try an elephant in 5 minutes.
I'm trying to do the math because that was the other thing. I came out of that dinner with like $2,500. It was like a 3-hour dinner, I must have, and the paintings you'd sell for cheap, but I must have done like 18 paintings. Yeah.
That's a good, because as we talked earlier, I think people, it makes it accessible when you're selling and it, your art at a good price. People feel like they can own original art, and I think they really like that.
That was something
Especially if they got to see you create it.
yeah, that
So
was
it's
something I was
awesome.
talking to my sister about the other day when it's funny when I moved to North Texas. Like I said, I was just looking to show my art, but then I got a little writing gig and for an online magazine, and so I started to interview people on social media that I found interesting and wanted to learn from. So it was kind of education, and I was getting paid for it. And the one guy, he's on Instagram, Nick Padilla13. His handle might have changed, but I would watch him post something, and it was gone in 30 seconds. And but they were all priced like between $25 and $50. And so I asked him about that, and they're like 8x10s. And he said, "Well, my work it's blue collar pricing." He's like, "I want everyone to be able to afford it," and
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was cool, and it made me rethink because when I was in Houston, my dollar value had what you buy today from me used to cost you a pretty penny. um, but hearing him say that, hearing him have concern for art collectors, it influenced me, and that's the other part of it is that if you produce all the time, then you have a lot of inventory, and you're able to do that.
Well,
So
and the thing is, because I worry about this all the time, or I mean, we discuss this all the time. You're right. Your inventory builds up, and you just got it there, and it's like, but I would love to share it with other people. And so, of course, artists always have a hard time pricing. And you hear all these different formulas, like, well, how many hours did it take you? That's more in line with crafting. And there's just, I mean, it's priceless, right? So it is how bad you want to get your work out there. And again, the blue collar pricing, I think, is a really good idea because you're gonna
it,
sell more.
and people have different ideas on it, and that's cool. The big eye opener for me was coming from a photography background. I man, there was lith printing, so this was special chemicals. It would take forever for me to get the print just right, and then digital comes along, and
Yeah.
this guy's talking to me about it, and I'm realizing that all of that work I did, yeah, I have this piece priced at that, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much time I put into it, but it also, in general, doesn't matter. No one's, I mean, not to say no one, but in general, people aren't worried about how much time you put in it. It's if they connect to it, if they like it. Um,
What about the old photography? Is that the old, the way they used to do things? Is that still? I
there are
mean, there are
some.
certain collectors market for that because it's kind of like the difference between an old album and a CD, isn't it?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, the photography is still collected to that degree. I just lost interest, like, because yeah, I can do what I did in photography on my phone now. what used to take me, what used to take me forever, what used to take me, $5,000 worth of equipment. I can now do on my phone, and I do. I take beautiful pictures, but
You know, that's a good point because you know, I will take pictures and sometimes use those pictures as a reference for my art. Is that something that you do a lot? Is use
Yeah.
your own pictures for your art, or does it mostly come out of your head? Because I mean, I remember how surprised I was. I took a class actually not too long ago, and everything was projected onto a canvas. I mean, I just always kind of thought people did this work, and it's like, I mean, you know, you see them doing all these little squares and they talk about, you know, the scale and all this, and then I realized that people are just taking images and projecting them onto a canvas and tracing them and painting them, and I'm like, oh well hell, I can do that.
Well, I was shocked coming from photography. Um, I mean, I'd always drawn, I'd always done my side things, but photography was the main focus for a good run. And then I decided I don't want to work at a desk, and so I lean into painting. And you know, initially it was all from my head, but then I wanted to learn some classical drawing and painting.
Right.
So I went and there's this teacher I liked. And yeah, the first class she has me bring a photo reference, which of course I have tons, and then I'm like, God, you're just ripping off photography. That's what it's. I like you, and I think most people probably have that idea. But yeah, most classical people that are working in that style are working from photography, and I learned a lot from that teacher. But then it's why I can do a lot of what I can do. But there was a point where I'm like, I'm just not interested in doing that. I came from photography. I can take a picture. I don't want to draw it. So
I agree. That's why I like the term Expedia so much, because you can just add anything you want to, and you know, use the materials in a different way. But yeah, the projector thing and thinking that I mean, it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I mean, you have to be a real artist, just especially if you're using, you know, like maybe a picture of a person, and that's what that's what I was trying to do because I'm not very good at people. But to get the shadows and things like that just right. But I really just was astounded when I realized that, you know, because I am the kind of person that I cannot make this side of a circle the same size as this side of a circle. And so just learning the different processes that you can apply to art, it's always worth it to take some kind of a class, or, you know, especially just to work with other artists. You learn tricks of the trade, I guess.
yeah, for sure. Tell us where we can find your art endeavors.
Well, actually, right now I do have my website, cindyshepard.com, and for a while I had it for my city council information, but I have decided, especially during COVID, and in order to help get the word out about local artists and local art and even local art opportunities, and being part of the Arts DFW nonprofit group to help local arts, I decided to kind of almost add a little bit of like what we're doing right now. I wanted to interview some people, but particularly as it applied to like nonprofits working with the arts, and you know, just different artists in the area and what they would consider doing for public art. You know, some of their ideas about public art and just using creativity out in the community. So I don't have a lot of my art up right now. Right now, I'm just I'm doing some outdoor shows. In fact, I'm doing one in Mansfield, October the 17th. You know, I've met another artist, and she and I are, I'm really she's one of these people that she's been laid off. She hasn't been an artist for a long time. And when we met, she decided to get back into art. And so this is kind of helping her make some extra money right now because she's been laid off. So I'm going to the Mid Cities Community Market and a few outdoor shows, but that otherwise you'll just find it in my studio. Just laying around, like a little bit over here and a little bit over there.
There you go.
So.
Yeah, well, that's something you touched upon, like the artist economy right now. Really interesting. We were talking about that with Teal's Sons. The first episode was about how markets are still going on, but how hard they are to begin with.
Yes.
And the importance of using what we can do virtually. That's where this podcast started from. Was I realize it's super important right now to connect, not just myself, but I like doing these interviews because it can broadcast what all of us are doing. And it's a discussion, but it's also a marketing piece for each artist that comes on here. So
see, I think that, I was reading an article the other day. Oh, I'm sorry, you kind of cut out, and I think I talked over you.
No, you're okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was reading an article the other day because really this may be that artist gallery connection may be lost for a lot of galleries now because artists are finding ways to connect online, to connect with each other, to, another thing I really like to do is Instagram. And I noticed that, in fact, that artist you were talking about earlier, that he would post things and they would be gone immediately. There are some artists on Instagram that have set up a real following. And so that's kind of what I'm doing my own art, but I'm also kind of reaching out to, well, I'll tell you another thing I'm doing, and you know about this, is that we've got a nonprofit called Thrift for Good. Mm-hmm. And I have asked them to let some of us as local artists go in and use some of their cast-offs and start making some of the items that maybe they can't resell, or they do some donation work as well, but to let us just go in and take that and make it into art, whether it's useful or whether it's just funky it up a little bit and sell it, just show other people what you can do with creativity. So that's one of the other things that I've really been involved in, is trying to get that started. In fact, I worked on a piece today. They gave me this funky little carved up wood thing that looked like it used to hold candles or something. I don't know. It's kind of gothic looking. So, and I'm going to put some gears on it. And I know steampunk is kind of going, it hasn't been real popular, but I still like that kind of look. So,
yeah.
So I'm working on something like that right now. So eventually you can maybe see some of our work at Thrift for Good.
Awesome. Yeah, no, definitely check them out, thriftforgood.com. So
and they are open now. They opened this week.
Yeah. So, no, those guys were tremendous when the pandemic started. Taylor Watts reached out to me immediately and asked us what we needed. Asked me who in the community needed something nonprofit-wise, and all of the names I gave him came back and said, yeah, they're amazing. So, and they truly are. We're blessed to have them. So
it's a new concept, kind of, because they are being able to store things in their warehouse. They also have a shop, but then if you take things into them, you can name the nonprofit that you would like to get the portion of the funds that they give. So
yeah, I guess we'll explain that a little more. So it's a thrift store, and yeah, each of the donations can, as you said, be dedicated to, it can go to 6 stones here in the community, or Mission Central, Central Arts, or Arts DFW. It's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm wanting to work more with that. In fact, when you mentioned Six Stones, I've been talking to them a little bit, because one of the things to plug your there goes my pen again. Sorry. To plug your little monster project. One of the things I get asked all the time is, do we have children's art classes? When I'm at the market every Saturday, I go to the community market here just to meet people and to sell my pots and things like that, connect with other artists. But when they know that it's an arts group and the Arts DFW nonprofit, they will ask if I know where there's kids classes, because especially now when a lot of kids are not going to school and they're at home, and I think not only are the parents like needing some way to keep them busy, I think that they also recognize how much they need that connection and that creative connection. And I feel like that's something that's really missing in a lot of communities. And I think that, like you doing the Little Monster Project, and having online classes, or having them where they can come and pick up and check out different things to use for art, is a fabulous idea. So I'm anxious to see how that goes for you, and I'm anxious to help you promote it, because it's very much needed in the community.
That's the beginning of it, where I'm about to put in the order for the materials, and in the next few weeks, hopefully, we'll see that start to come to fruition. All right.
Well, your Little Monster Kids have been very successful. A lot of because we put some of those together or you did, so that we can raise some funding for Little Monsters, and the kids just love them. Yeah. They'll pick out 2 or 3 of them. So
that's awesome.
Good job, Sergio.
It's awesome. It's awesome that they're connecting that way, because honestly,
you've had a lot of not just myself, but you've had a lot of artists participate in drawing the monsters, so you've really got the community involved in that way too.
Yeah, well, that's what it's about.
It is.
But, all right, I'm gonna wrap us up. Is there anything else you'd like to plug or talk about?
No, just I don't know how I would just like to hear from other people how they are working with artists in their community, and like maybe some ideas they have for public art, or how to work with nonprofits. So just to kind of get the talk going and continuing, so that we can just bring creativity to all over the world, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm happy to hear you're doing your own podcast. Do you have a name for it yet?
Well, it's not really a podcast. I've got it on my website, and it's just going to be like, right now I've only done a few short little talks with some people that are going to be. I'm going to do a few online classes, and also it'll be a platform for other artists to have online classes. And it's called Cindy's Art Cafe.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah.
So check it out.
What the name of it was, and it's all on my website. But it's kind of a construction too. It's a work in progress.
But check out cindyshepard.com. And
that's right.
All right. I am totally going to drag you back here, because I think we could talk for hours and hours, but we should probably break it up for the audience. But thank you for all that you do.
Enjoy talking to you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for, as I said, you were a ray of light in our search for the community that we've built. So okay, thank you.
People go.